We're just 16 days away from the release of Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire in North America and Japan. Just 16 days. But today's video is only going to loosely tie in with these games. You guys are probably familiar with the leaks from Project Pokémon that occurred a couple of weeks ago. A lot was revealed, including base stats for Mega Evolutions, in-game music, and the reveal of move tutors once again reappearing in these games. An interesting overlooked piece of information was that the little pentagon that signals a Pokémon is bred in the Generation 6 games is only going to be available in the next 2 Pokemon games, which means we can only expect 2 more Pokemon games within this generation. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a look into the future of Pokemon games and what we can expect next year and maybe the year after. This video is an open discussion. I'm really interested in what you guys think will be the next Pokemon games after Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. 800 likes would be really appreciated for another Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire related video tonight, and my name is P-Winall. Let's jump straight into this little open discussion / speculation. This video a lot later on is going to feature a lot of speculation that might not be entirely realistic, but this first idea is probably the most realistic option out of every idea I'm going to bring to the table today. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with the 2 unannounced and unrevealed attacks that are most likely going to be appearing on Zygarde a little bit later on in the future. These 2 attacks are both ground type attacks by the names of 1000 Waves and 1000 Arrows. Describing 1000 Waves, the user attacks with a wave that crawls along the ground. Those hit can't flee from battle. And describing 1000 Arrows, this move also hits opposing Pokemon that are in the air. These Pokemon are knocked down to the ground. Both of these attacks seem like an ideal counter for Zygarde to counter both Xerneas and Yveltal. Zygarde is very underpowered as of now, featuring weaknesses to both Xerneas and Yveltal. Yveltal because it's a flying type. Zygarde can't possibly hit it with its ground type stab attacks. And the first idea I'm bringing to the table today is a Pokémon X and Pokémon Y sequel, much like Pokémon Black 2 and Y2. Pokémon X2 and Pokémon Y2. In my personal opinion, these 2 games are the most likely to be after Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and these 2 attacks would be introduced onto Zygarde in Pokémon X2 and Y2 depending on which version you're playing. Also, the idea of X2 and Y2 being the next Pokémon games just makes sense after Pokémon Black 2 and White 2, as only 2 more games can feature a blue pentagon once that game's Pokémon is traded to Pokémon X and Pokémon Y, meaning these 2 games will probably be the last 2 Generation 6 games. It was an unconventional move for Game Freak to actually release a sequel instead of a 3rd game within the generation. As I said, this video is going to be very speculation heavy, and while I can't really provide any substantial proof, these 2 attacks being in the game's files is a pretty decent hint towards a sequel for these games. And while it isn't 100% proof, or even proof at all, I hope you find this point interesting. With the release of Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, a remake of the Generation 3 games, it would also make sense that the counterpart to Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, that also appeared in Generation 3, would receive a remake, especially with Pokémon Red and Green's anniversary, their 20th anniversary, coming up in February of 2016. Pokémon Red and Green were released in February of 1996, meaning it's almost 20 years since their initial release, and we all know just how, nostalgic Game Freak and Nintendo can be about their games. This is where the video starts to get very speculation heavy, as there is 0 proof of this happening, and the chance of this actually happening with Red and Blue already being remade 10 years ago is very minute. But I don't think I'm the only one that would love to see Pokémon Red and Blue remade for the Nintendo 3DS, being able to play it in 3D. And I think Game Freak know that, and I'm sure they would love to capitalize on that. Modernizing and remaking a game that's already been remade, however, would be a little too much for Nintendo, I think. and while I would like to see it, I don't think Pokémon Red and Blue are going to be remade, but it does make sense. Their initial game's anniversary is coming up, there's 2 more games that can receive pentagons to state a Pokemon is from Generation 6, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green featuring the same generation as Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. It all adds up. However, I particularly don't think it's the most realistic thing we could ask for, so don't get your hopes up, I guess. Finally, there's the very obvious choice of there being a Pokemon Z. It just makes sense. Pokemon X, Y, Z, Zygarde being a counterpart to Xerneas and Yveltal. It just makes sense. I'm sure I don't need to even discuss that with you guys because it just makes sense. But that would leave one pentagon slot open for this generation of games. And if Pokemon Z was released, I wouldn't put it past Nintendo remaking Pokemon Yellow for all the same reasons I've just discussed, which in my personal opinion would be the absolute best of both worlds, being able to remake Kanto and also having a counterpart game for Pokemon X and Y in the form of Z. I'm not going to discuss this too much, honestly. I don't think this is realistic and I'm really nervous about posting this video. I think a lot of you guys are going to be, I don't know, irritated by the amount of speculation in this video, but that's my thoughts and opinions on what we could see after Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Just a quick friendly reminder, my 3rd limited edition Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire related t-shirt has went on sale. It's a design surrounding the shiny legendary trio of Hoenn, shiny Primal Groudon, shiny Primal Kyogre and shiny Mega Rayquaza. And I really like the design and I really hope you guys do too. You'll definitely receive your t-shirt if you order or have ordered one. It says so on the page, so we've already reached the tipping point for the printing. We only had to sell 5 for Teespring to print it, so even if we don't sell any more, you'll definitely get it. It's available until November 20th, one day before the games come out and won't ever be printed again. So if you want one, get one before it's too late. A link's in the description below. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this little fun video to tie us over until the Nintendo Direct later today, and more news next week. This was just a fun video. 800 likes would be really appreciated for another Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire related video tonight, and feel free to subscribe so you don't miss any more of my future Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire videos. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you guys hopefully tonight. If not tonight, definitely tomorrow. Peace out.